What's up, YouTube? It's Ed here, and today we have the Prey new movie from Hulu review. Just FYI, this review will contain spoilers, so if you don't want to hear what happens in this movie and all the details about it, then I suggest you go watch the movie or go, look at another review, because I am going to tell you a lot about the story, the characters, and some of the things I do like, I don't like, and all that jazz. So, you've been warned. So, all right, so let's get with it. Overall, this is a great movie. This is like the best movie since the first one. All right, Predator 2 was like, it's kind of dorky, like a little bit ridiculous. I mean, it was that kind of late 80s, early 90s vibe to it, where it was just not super realistic, or it's just like it's just all about the action. You didn't feel it um, as claustrophobic as the first one. And then all the subsequent ones after that were just terrible, like Predators, The Predator, um, AVP. I mean, I don't even know if those are canon at this point. So, like all those out of like the 6 movies, I guess now, or 7 movies, including Prey. Like Prey is definitely number 2. The first one's always going to be the best, right? Because it was just so new. It was like fresh. It was like a new take on everything. Now that technology and CGI has been upgraded by a ton, this looks a lot better too. So, but anyway, so onto the story. So this is based about 300 years according to Hulu. It's like 300 years from today, where we meet this girl named Naru, played by Amber Midthunder, who does a great job um, of portraying this character. This girl who's, she's coming of age and she's ready to take a test to become like a hunter, right? Like she wants to not just be a gatherer, that's part of her tribe, but she wants to be a hunter as well. And there's this test to basically where you have to hunt. I guess basically an apex predator, like something that hunts. Like they say, it's something you hunt something that hunts you. So this can't just be a prey. Like it can't just be like a deer. It has to be like a bear, like a lion, something that will kill you too. If you mess with it. So that's like kind of the test, right? And I guess, and if you do this, I guess you become the war chief or something. I'm not sure. Like they didn't really go too much into that, but it doesn't really matter. Because all we really care about is like how does the predator look, like what comes of it. And so she goes on to, she's kind of like young and just like kind of thick-headed. She's very stubborn, and she's like kind of willing to listen to her parents. It's like, okay, like normal teen or like young, you know uh, young people type of attitude, no big deal. I do like the fact that she's just not naturally gifted at being a hunter or something. She is like a very good tracker, which is great. Which I'm kind of, which I think is kind of funny, because like any hunter needs to be a tracker too, because like she does, like she finds things that none of the other hunters see, and I'm like, are these people stupid? Like it's like, how do you guys become hunters? But she's a very good hunter. She knows medicine. um and there's like a training montage ish of her, like trying to be better, which is great. It's not like Mulan where she's just naturally gifted at everything. Like she doesn't really have to train for anything. Which that was kind of like just annoying, because like almost every kind of like hero type person in history had to train in some shape or form, minus like Superman. Like that's the only dude that doesn't have to really learn how to fight, because like no one can really beat him. So anyways, so so he goes through this training montage, and then eventually they come across the predator, who comes in, and it's like very interesting how the predator comes in, the Yautja. He kind of successively just hunts things that are clearly hunting others. So he mainly preys on predators. First you see him uh, kill a wolf, and then he kills like a snake, because like these are all hunters. And then he eventually finds like the humans who are hunting everything else, and he's like, all right, now I'm gonna get these guys. um the weird thing I say about like this particular predator is that like he gets attacked a lot. Like that's like the weird thing is that like he gets injured like on almost every encounter, and I'm like, dude, like don't you know how to dodge or block or something? Like when he first fights the wolf, he lets it. He could have, I don't know, just kicked the wolf or something, but instead he lets the wolf bite him, and I'm like, dude, like you're clearly stronger than like any species on this planet, and you're also cloaked. So you could pretty much like destroy this wolf with like one swack, but you let it bite you. Like those are little things. I'm just like, what? Like it makes no sense. Um, but overall, though, I think it definitely maybe it's like a younger predator. I don't know. Like that's the thing with this one predator. Maybe it's just like it's not as seasoned with his hunting skills or something. They still have like the cool technology, but I think because it's 300 years in the past, it's not as advanced as it is like in the other Predator movies, which I'm thinking that it's still within the canon of the world, because they at the end of the movie they do tie it back to a scene that's in Predator 2, and I'll go over that. So it is within its own canon, or it is within like the normal canon. At least I assume it is. Anyways, so story goes through the transition of Naru and like how she has to fight off this predator, because once she realizes like that, like, oh, this is like a whole new brand new monster. I think the good thing about this is that she really has to be become the hunter in a way that's like she has to outsmart this new beast, because like she knows she can't go up front, like go head to head with it, because like this guy will literally throw her around like a rag doll, or the predator. Modern her weapons are like virtually useless, because in the sense that like they're just you know basic tools like an axe and some bow and arrows. Like this dude has like shields and like spears that can come apart, and has this like homing arrow shooting thing, and it's like instead of like a normal plasma cannon. So like all this stuff is super advanced, and she knows she can't just go like, okay, I'm just gonna go right for you. She has to outsmart it, and she does, which I that's like the one thing I love. It's like it's clever. It's not just like, oh, I'm just gonna. That's the one thing that was great about the first one. It was that Arnold and his team were clever. They set up traps. The whole end sequence where Arnold sets up all these traps to get the predator. It was very clever, and she does the same thing. Versus like Predator 2, you don't get any of that really or at all. You just get like kind of Danny Glover, in his like I'm too old for this, kind of attitude, and like in the disc or whatever. And then in all the other subsequent movies is never as clever. So I think that's one of the best things about this. Some of the other weird or yeah. So anyways, one of the big changes from this is the design of the predator. So that was like kind of, so when they finally revealed like how the predator looks, it was very very different. Like the first off, the face mask, or like the kind of whatever, I don't even what you call it. Like it's kind of we'll just call it face mask. It definitely does not look like anything like you see here with the predators. It's more so it doesn't cover their entire face. It's not like the thing where they have to like take off some plugs, and then it seems to like be feeding them some kind of different atmosphere. Instead, it covers, it actually reveals, or like it doesn't cover like the like fangs that they have on the bottom. So it is only kind of like a 75% face mask, and while it still does the same thing that the old face mask does, it gives them like infrared and all that jazz. It doesn't, or like heat signatures. You don't see the design of it. Instead, there's like a more organic look to it. It looks like the predator actually put some kind of skull or like animal skin on top of the mask, or maybe it's just made of that for all I know. But it definitely does not look like your normal predator mask, which I thought was really. I was kind of on the fence about it. I'm like, it looks cool, but it's also like, oh, I was expecting the predator mask, maybe like a different redesign of it, but not looking like that. But I do kind of like how like his even his fangs are showing, which I'm like, oh, that's kind of dope. Also, the entire look of the predator is completely different in terms of whoever like is not longer like a bodysuit. It looked more like a human who just got some like a lot of makeup painted on him. So movement was a lot more natural. The hair was no longer like super thick dreadlocks like the way they used to put it in like all the other movies. It was more flowy. I guess it was a lot thinner. It was probably like half the size. So it didn't look as ridiculous, I would say. So that design was very a welcome change. Um, One of the biggest changes was just the face of the predator too. Maybe in 300 years they evolved their look a little bit, but the face itself, like, because if you look at this other this kind of like this background picture in the predator thumbnail here, the eyes are very like it's a lot more humanoid in terms of the eyes are closer together, and like they have the fangs like going like this. Instead, the new Predator look, the eyes are actually farther apart, and it's a completely redesign of the head itself, and it actually looks a lot more alien and less like human with makeup on. So I thought that was a very welcome change as well. Um, and then we definitely got to see a completely new redesign of all of its gear too. So, in terms of like the wrist gauntlet, we got something completely new in terms of um, in like the old one was just kind of look it looked more like a really old PDF, and it's just like a handful of buttons, and like there wasn't really much else to it. Versus the new one, it's a lot more kind of actually it looks more high tech in a lot of ways, but also still caters to what we know as the Predator Gauntlet. In terms of its technology, is not overly powerful in the sense that he had gadgets, but he didn't have as much gadgets as he would in a lot of the other Predator movies, especially Alien versus Predator. It was like completely ridiculous, where it was like, oh yeah, I have all these like mines set up and everything, and I'm like, how are you not just completely taking over like all civilizations with all this crazy technology? And instead of a plasma cannon, he has a weapon to basically well, he doesn't have a plasma cannon. Arguably, he has like a more like a bolt shooter, and these bolts are like homing missiles. So like wherever his laser guiding system will aim, the bolts will go straight to it. And the cooler thing is that since there's 3 lasers, he can shoot out 3 bolts at a time, and depending on which each laser goes, it will hit those targets. I'm like, wow, like I feel like that's more useful in some cases than the plasma. I mean, arguably the plasma gun will just wipe out an enemy like one shot, one kill, versus a bolt may not do the same. But arguably you can hit more targets. So maybe they need to figure out something to give them 3 guns. I don't know, or like 3, or like a plasma gun that could split into 3 or something. I don't know. But that was kind of like a neat new change. His spear staff can split into 2. That was like I thought that was pretty cool, where he can split into 2 and now have like 2 shorter hand-to-hand weapons. And then obviously his wrist gauntlet with the blades, that's always going to be a classic touch. Like you can't have Predator without that. So overall, I think this movie is just it does a really great job of just bringing it back home in terms of like, okay, we need a clever scene, because obviously predators are apex predators, right? like in terms of their technology and just overall strength, like people can't just go up against them and expect to win, like, not head to head. So it always has to be a clever, way of fighting against them. So, and I think Prey really does that really well. Um, Again, is it as good as the original? No, but this one does just as good a job. They even throw some one-liners that we remember from the first one, like "If it bleeds, we can kill it." Those are some things that they throw back in there, which is great. Um, but yeah, I really enjoy this movie. So onto the one throwback why I think this still, well, it could be in the same universe, but it could also not be. Is like, so the one throwback, another kind of Easter egg throwback that they do is the gun that Danny Glover gets at the end of Predator 2, where it's a flintlock pistol or musket pistol from like the 1700s, and it says Raphael Adolini on it. So the story behind that is pretty interesting, which I'll get into in a second. So Naru, at the end of her journey, she gets this pistol from one of the French poachers, some of the humans that were also part of this hunting party. They were a little bit stereotypical, but whatever. She gets the pistol and she throws a pistol to, like, I guess her tribal chief, and they zoom in and it's the same pistol. It says Raphael Adolini 1715. And I was like, oh, cool, or 17, whatever. I'm like, it's the same pistol, but why does she have it? So I'm assuming they're trying to like say like, hey, this pistol is a sign that this world is connected, but the story behind the pistol and how the Predator gets it it doesn't really match up. So in the original story, the Predator goes to like 17, some like comes to Earth around like 1718 or something like that, and he observes this pirate Raphael Adolini, and he deems this guy like worthy of like fighting, and he's like, oh, I want to fight this guy, because he seems like a really honorable or like worthy opponent. And what ends up happening is that like the pirate Raphael, he gets there, like something with a mutiny happens, and then the Predator actually ends up defending him when his crew tries to kill him. But then Raphael gets killed, and in his last breath or like last moment, he gives the Predator his pistol, which is how that Predator gets the pistol. And from that pistol, and then a couple hundred years later, he gives that same pistol to Danny Glover in the story. So the Predator gets the pistol from a pirate. Now, in here, I'm not sure if they're insinuating that the poacher that Naru gets it from is Raphael, because like he seemed more like an interpreter, and they're not pirates; they're just poachers, And that same gun is given to her, who she like I guess throws, who she's keeping. So I'm like, okay, at which point in this movie timeline does that gun go to the Predator that gives it to Danny Glover? like because it has to change its hands back to a pirate or the pirate or something in a way to get. So I don't know what the deal is. I guess maybe they're changing up the timeline, or maybe it's just an Easter egg. Like they're just like, oh, they're gonna acknowledge it, but arguably it doesn't really fit the narrative or like fit the timeline, or it's not the canon. So I don't know what the deal is. Personally, I would rather they just reboot this whole thing. Like if Prey was like, okay, we're rebooting this with this new Predator design, and all this is now like a new thing, like how the Halo series, like this is the Silver timeline. Okay, this is the Prey timeline instead of Predator. I would much prefer that, because with all these like little Easter eggs, I'm like, okay, I don't know where to go now with this. So, anyways, that's just my take on all this whole thing. Again, really think you guys should go watch this. It's absolutely excellent. I think I might watch it again, because it's just it's a really good movie, and it's definitely something refreshing, especially come out of Hulu, and with all the previous Predator movies just being completely crap. this is definitely something that's a breath of fresh air, and I'm so glad that they finally brought it back to what it's meant to be. So, anyways, thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys think of the movie in the comments, and I'll talk to you guys later. Take it easy.